Chanel. One of the most protected luxury brands in the world. A house that has never publicly blacklisted a royal figure. Until now. In early 2025, reports surfaced that Meghan Markle was denied entry at a Chanel location. What followed was not quiet. It was not brief. And it was caught. The question is not just what happened inside that store. The question is what led Chanel, a brand built on silence, to make a move this public. Chanel does not make mistakes at the door. That is not an opinion. That is an operational fact built into how the house runs its retail locations worldwide. Every flagship store, every boutique operating under the Chanel name, functions with a level of staff training and security protocol that most luxury brands do not match. Entry management at a Chanel location is not left to chance. It is not left to the instinct of a single security guard on a given afternoon. Instructions come from above. They come clearly. And they are followed. That is what makes the reported incident involving Meghan Markle significant. Not the confrontation itself. Not the reaction that followed. But the fact that a denial of entry at a Chanel location does not happen unless someone, somewhere, gave the instruction for it to happen. Chanel was founded in 1910 by Gabrielle Bonheur Chanel in Paris, France. In the decades that followed, the house built one of the most recognized luxury identities in the world. Its clientele has included heads of state, members of royal families, and the most closely watched public figures of every generation. The house has maintained relationships with these figures carefully and quietly. Chanel does not court controversy. It does not invite it. When tension has arisen with a client or public figure in the past, the house has managed it internally, away from cameras, away from press, and almost always without public acknowledgement. This is not accidental. It is structural. Chanel's leadership has, for decades, operated on a principle of controlled silence. The brand speaks through its collections, its campaigns, and its carefully selected ambassadors. It does not speak through incident reports or public disputes. When Chanel moves against someone, it does so without announcement. Which is exactly why what happened in early 2025 drew attention from people who understand how this world works. According to reports that surfaced in early 2025, Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, arrived at a Chanel location and was denied entry by security personnel stationed at the door. The location of the specific store has been cited by multiple sources, though Chanel has not issued any formal statement confirming or detailing the event. What sources close to the situation have described is this: Markle arrived at the entrance. Security personnel did not allow her to proceed inside. The exchange that followed was not brief. It was not resolved quietly. Those present at or near the location at the time reported that the situation escalated beyond a standard access delay. The timeline, according to available reports, placed the incident during retail hours, in a setting where other customers and bystanders were present. This is relevant. A quiet, private refusal behind closed doors carries one set of implications. A visible, witnessed refusal at a public entrance carries another. Sources with knowledge of Chanel's internal access protocols have confirmed that security teams at flagship and high-profile Chanel locations do not independently decide to turn away recognized public figures. The decision to restrict entry for a figure of Markle's public profile would require prior authorization. It would require instruction passed down through a chain of management. A security guard standing at the door of a Chanel boutique does not make that call alone. That detail matters more than any description of what was said or how the situation appeared to those watching. The immediate reaction from those present, according to reports, was one of visible tension. Witnesses described an exchange at the door that drew attention from people nearby. The specifics of what was said have not been fully confirmed by any named source. What has been reported consistently is that the situation did not pass unnoticed and that it did not resolve quickly. Markle's representatives did not issue a formal response to the initial reports. Chanel did not comment. The silence from both sides, in this context, is notable rather than neutral. In the luxury retail world, incidents of this nature involving figures of this profile are typically handled before they reach the door. A disagreement between a house and a high-profile client is usually managed through back channels, a quiet communication, a scheduling adjustment, an arrangement that prevents a public moment from occurring. The fact that this situation became visible, became witnessed, and became reported suggests that either the normal back-channel process failed, or that it was deliberately not used. Both possibilities carry weight. What is confirmed is this: something happened at that door. It was seen. It was reported by multiple outlets. It drew coverage from sources that do not typically engage with entertainment-level reporting. And it involved a brand that has spent over a century ensuring that its name is never attached to scenes of public friction. Chanel's reputation is one of its most carefully guarded assets. The house does not stumble into public incidents. It does not allow them to happen passively. If Meghan Markle was denied entry at a Chanel location, that denial was not a mistake. It was not a miscommunication between a guard and a manager. It was an instruction that was carried out exactly as it was intended. The question that remains, and that no source has yet fully answered, is not whether this happened. The question is whether this was the first time it happened, or whether early 2025 was simply the first time the door closed in public view. Because in a world where Chanel controls almost everything quietly, the fact that this moment was seen at all may not have been an accident. And that possibility changes everything that comes after it. Chanel does not react. That distinction is important. Many brands, even powerful ones, operate in a reactive mode. A public figure causes friction. The brand responds. A statement is issued. A relationship is quietly ended and then publicly explained. That is how most institutions handle conflict when it reaches a certain level of visibility. Chanel does not operate that way. The house has spent more than a century building something that goes beyond product, beyond fashion, beyond fragrance. What Chanel has constructed, carefully and deliberately across generations of leadership, is a system of protection. Not protection for its clients. Protection for the brand itself. And understanding that system is the only way to understand why the reported incident with Meghan Markle carries the weight that it does. To understand what Chanel protects, it is necessary to understand what the house has built. Chanel is not simply a fashion label. It is one of a small number of luxury institutions that has achieved what industry analysts describe as brand sovereignty. This means the house operates with a level of independence and identity strength that allows it to set terms rather than respond to them. It does not chase cultural relevance. It does not adjust its positioning based on what is trending. It moves on its own timeline, by its own standards, and according to its own internal logic. This positioning was not inherited. It was built. Gabrielle Chanel established the foundation. Karl Lagerfeld, who served as creative director for over 3 decades until his death in 2019, reinforced and expanded it. The current leadership has maintained it. The result is a brand that sits in a category with very few peers, a house that can afford to say no, and that has structured itself to say no without explanation. That structural capacity is central to what makes the reported Markle incident significant. Within the luxury industry, there is a practice that insiders understand clearly but that is rarely discussed publicly. It is the practice of quiet distancing. When a luxury house determines that a high-profile individual no longer aligns with what the brand represents, whether due to public behavior, reputational shifts, commercial conflicts, or internal policy decisions, it does not issue a statement. It does not call a press conference. It does not release a list of individuals who are no longer welcome. It adjusts access. Access is the currency of the luxury world. Who receives an invitation to a private show? Who is offered early access to a collection? Who is accommodated when they walk through a door without an appointment? These decisions are not random. They are managed. And when a house decides to withdraw access from a specific individual, that withdrawal is communicated internally, through staff briefings, through updated protocols, through quiet instruction that moves down the chain without ever reaching the public record. This is how luxury brands signal a blacklisting without confirming one. There is no press release. There is no public comment. There is only a door that does not open, an invitation that does not arrive, a fitting that is never scheduled. For most individuals who experience this, the message is received privately and the situation remains private. The system works precisely because both sides have reasons to keep it quiet. What made the reported Markle incident different is that it did not stay quiet. Sources within the luxury industry have described Chanel's internal culture as one of the most disciplined in the sector. Staff at Chanel locations worldwide undergo training that emphasizes discretion above almost everything else. Client information is protected. Internal decisions are not discussed outside authorized channels. And access decisions, particularly those involving public figures, are handled at a management level that does not leave room for improvisation. According to people familiar with how Chanel manages its high-profile client relationships, the house maintains what can be described as a tiered access structure. At the highest tier are individuals who receive proactive outreach, invitations, dedicated appointments, private access to collections before public release. Below that are standard high-net-worth clients who receive attentive but conventional service. And then there is a category that does not appear on any official document but that staff understand clearly. Individuals for whom access has been restricted, either temporarily or on a more permanent basis. Movement between these tiers does not happen spontaneously. It is a managed decision. And according to sources, that decision, when it involves a figure of significant public profile, does not originate at the store level. This is the context that surrounds the reported incident at the door. If Meghan Markle was denied entry, and multiple reports indicate that she was, then the denial was not the beginning of the story. It was the visible end of a process that had already been completed elsewhere, at a higher level, before she ever reached that entrance. The security personnel at the door were not making a judgment call. They were executing one. And that means the more important question is not what happened at the door. The more important question is what happened inside Chanel, in its management structure, in its brand strategy meetings, in its internal communications, that produced the instruction that reached those security personnel on that day. Chanel protects its name above everything else. Above client relationships. Above public perception in the short term. Above the discomfort of a visible moment at a retail entrance. When the house moves against someone, it is because a calculation has already been made. A calculation that determined the cost of association was higher than the cost of distance. That calculation did not happen overnight. And the events that drove it stretch back further than early 2025. No institutional decision exists in isolation. That is true in politics. It is true in finance. And it is true in the luxury fashion world, where relationships between houses and high-profile figures are built slowly, maintained carefully, and ended, when they are ended, for reasons that have usually been accumulating for a long time before the final break becomes visible. The reported Chanel incident did not arrive without context. To understand what led to that door closing, it is necessary to look at what came before it. Not at a single moment. Not at a single disagreement. But at a pattern. A pattern that, when examined across a period of several years, tells a more complete story than any single reported incident can carry on its own. When Meghan Markle married Prince Harry in May 2018, her position within the world of luxury fashion was immediately elevated. Royal status carries a specific kind of commercial power that very few other forms of public profile can match. What a senior working royal wears becomes news within hours. Brands associated with that royal receive coverage that no advertising budget can fully replicate. The relationship between the British royal family and the global luxury fashion industry is long established, carefully managed, and mutually beneficial. Markle entered that system and, for a period, operated within it effectively. Her early appearances as a working royal generated significant attention for the brands she wore. Designers reported increased visibility and sales inquiries following her public appearances. The interest from luxury houses was real, and it was substantial. But according to sources within the fashion industry, the nature of that relationship began to shift as early as 2019. The shift was not dramatic at first. It was the kind of shift that only becomes clear in retrospect, when individual data points are placed beside each other and a direction becomes visible. Sources with knowledge of how luxury houses manage their royal and celebrity relationships have described a period, beginning in late 2019 and accelerating through 2020, during which Markle's team began approaching brand relationships differently than the established protocol of royal fashion engagement typically allowed. Royal fashion relationships, at their traditional level, operate on an understood set of terms. A working royal wears a designer. The designer receives visibility. There is no formal commercial arrangement disclosed. The benefit flows through association, not through contract. This is the system that has governed royal fashion for decades, and it is a system that luxury houses understand and respect because it protects the integrity of the royal association itself. According to reports and industry sources, tensions began to surface when expectations around these arrangements started to move outside those understood terms. Questions around formal agreements, image usage rights, and the commercial structuring of what had previously been informal associations were raised in communications between Markle's team and certain fashion houses. The specific houses involved in these early friction points have not all been named publicly. But sources confirm that the conversations happened, that they created discomfort within at least several brand management teams, and that they were noted internally in ways that shaped how those houses approached future engagement with Markle's team. The formal step back from royal duties, announced in January 2020 and finalized in the months that followed, changed Markle's position within the luxury fashion ecosystem in ways that were not immediately visible to the public. As a working royal, her fashion choices carried the weight of institutional association. Once that institutional framework was removed, the calculus for luxury brands changed. The visibility was still there. The public profile remained significant. But the specific prestige of royal association, the thing that made a brand's appearance on a working royal member different from an appearance on any other high-profile public figure, was no longer part of the equation in the same way. For some brands, this shift was manageable. For others, particularly those whose identity is built on a very specific kind of heritage and discretion, it introduced complications. Chanel sits firmly in the second category. Between 2020 and 2024, Markle's movement through luxury fashion spaces continued. She maintained a visible presence at high-profile events, in commercial partnerships, and in media appearances where fashion choices carried significant public attention. But during this same period, according to sources familiar with industry sentiment, a quiet repositioning was taking place behind the scenes. Multiple luxury houses, none of which made public statements, are reported to have adjusted the nature of their engagement with Markle's team. Invitations to private events became less frequent. Outreach that had previously come proactively from brand teams slowed or stopped. Fitting appointments that would typically be arranged with little friction became harder to schedule. This is the pattern that the luxury industry uses when it withdraws without announcing a withdrawal. One brand in particular, which sources have referenced but not yet named publicly, is reported to have formalized its distancing from Markle's team following a specific disagreement over the terms of a potential collaboration in 2023. The details of that disagreement have not been fully confirmed. But the outcome, according to sources, was a clear internal decision to limit future engagement. Whether that brand was Chanel has not been confirmed. But what sources do confirm is that Chanel was among the houses paying close attention to how these situations were developing across the industry. By 2024, Markle's commercial activity had expanded significantly. A lifestyle brand launch, increased media presence, and a series of public appearances placed her in frequent contact with the luxury retail world. Sources from within that world describe a period during which her team's approach to brand engagement continued to generate friction, not loudly, not publicly, but consistently enough to be noted across multiple houses. It is against this backdrop that the events of early 2025 must be understood. The door that did not open at that Chanel location was not a spontaneous decision made on a quiet afternoon. It was the final visible point of a line that had been drawn much earlier. And according to at least one source with direct knowledge of internal discussions at a major luxury house, the Chanel incident was not the first time access had been restricted for Markle at a high-end retail location. It was simply the first time it happened where people were watching. The question of what those earlier unseen moments looked like, and which other houses were involved, has not yet been answered. And that question does not have a simple resolution. In the luxury world, visibility is controlled. That is not an accident. It is architecture. The physical design of high-end retail spaces, the positioning of security personnel, the management of foot traffic near entrances, all of it is structured to ensure that what happens inside, and immediately outside, a luxury location remains within the control of the house that owns it. Cameras exist in these spaces. They exist in abundance. But the footage they capture belongs to the institution, not to the public, and the decision of what to do with that footage rests entirely with the people at the top of that institution. This is the framework within which the reported footage of the Chanel incident must be understood. Because according to multiple reports, what happened at that entrance was not only witnessed by people who happened to be present. It was recorded.